All right, let's talk about one of the biggest moves in tech regulation we've seen in a long, long time. We're diving into the European Union's new AI Act. And trust me, this is way more than just some legal document. It's basically the EU drawing up a blueprint for the future of artificial intelligence. So, let's get into it.
First things first, you might see EU in the name and think this is just a European thing. But nope, this law has some seriously long arms. It's built from the ground up to have a massive global footprint, and a lot of people are saying this is going to become the new gold standard for AI rules everywhere.
So, what's the big idea behind it? Well, the main goal is to create one single set of rules for the entire EU market. They want to push for what they're calling human-centric and trustworthy AI. Making sure everything is grounded in core EU values, like safety, democracy, and basic rights. It's all about trying to build trust in the tech while also letting it grow.
Now here's the part that really matters for the rest of the world. It's this idea of an extraterritorial scope. What does that actually mean? Well, think about it like this. If a small developer in, say, Austin, Texas, makes an AI photo app, and somebody in Paris downloads and uses it, boom. That developer in Austin now has to play by these EU rules. That's how far this thing reaches.
Okay, so to really get how this whole thing works, we need to understand who the law is actually talking to. The Act gets super specific about the different roles everyone has in the AI food chain, so let's break down who's who.
First up, what even is an AI system according to this law? The definition is intentionally really broad, and that's to make it future-proof. The key word to focus on here is infers. It's not just a machine following a set of commands, it's a system that can look at input and then generate something new, like a prediction or a piece of content. This wide net is meant to catch not just the AI we have today, but the AI that hasn't even been invented yet.
Next, we've got the provider. You can just think of them as the creator, the one who actually builds the AI system. By naming the provider, the Act creates a really clear line of responsibility. No matter how complicated the supply chain gets, there's always one person or company, the one with their name on the box, so to speak, who is ultimately on the hook for making sure the system is compliant from day one.
And then there's the deployer. This is pretty much anyone, a hospital, a bank, a law firm, that uses an AI system as part of their job. The key phrase here is professional capacity. So if you're just playing around with a chatbot for fun on a Saturday, you're not a deployer. But if your company uses an AI tool to sort through resumes, you're absolutely a deployer, and you've got rules to follow.
So how in the world is the EU going to regulate this massive, sprawling technology? Well, they're not using a sledgehammer. Instead, they came up with this really smart system that's all based on risk. And the best way to picture it is as a pyramid. And that really brings up the big question, right? How can a single law possibly cover something as simple as an email spam filter and something as incredibly complex as an AI that assists in robotic surgery? The whole answer is in one word: proportion.
The Act uses what's called a proportional, risk-based approach. It's a really simple but powerful idea. I mean, you wouldn't have the same speed limit in a school zone as you do on the highway, right? Of course not. The rules have to match the potential for danger. The AI Act just applies that exact same logic to technology.
And here it is, the framework in a nutshell. It's a 4-level pyramid. At the very tippy top, you've got unacceptable risk. Right below that, high risk. Then comes limited risk, and at the bottom, making up this huge base, is minimal risk. Each level has its own set of rules.
Let's start at the top, unacceptable risk. These are the AI practices that the EU says are just a flat-out threat to people's safety and fundamental rights. We're talking about things like government-run social scoring, or AI that manipulates people in harmful ways. These systems aren't regulated. They are just banned, period.
Okay, moving down a level, we get to high risk. This is where the rulebook gets really thick. This bucket is for AI used in really critical areas. Medical devices, the power grid, or systems used for hiring people, figuring out your credit score, and even in law enforcement. These things aren't banned, but they have to meet super strict requirements for safety, transparency, and human oversight before they can see the light of day.
For the next category, limited risk, the whole game is transparency. This covers things like chatbots or AI that makes deep fakes. The rule is simple. You, as the user, have a right to know that you're talking to an AI and not a person. It's all about clear labeling, so nobody gets fooled. And finally, we get to the bottom of the pyramid, minimal risk. And this is where most AI systems we use today actually live. Think about the AI in video games, or that spam filter we talked about. The Act basically says these things pose little to no risk, so for the most part, they're left alone. No new rules. Now, like any huge piece of law, the AI Act also has some really important exceptions. It's just as critical to know what the law doesn't cover.
So, the Act carves out a few specific areas. AI systems that are only used for military and defense, they're out. Same goes for systems used for national security. And, this one's important, to make sure innovation doesn't get slowed down, any AI that's developed only for scientific research and development is also exempt from all these rules.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean? The EU AI Act is honestly more than just a law. It's a major statement about how we, as a society, think we should be building and using AI.
And you don't even have to take my word for it. This quote from the Act itself kind of says it all. The goal is to create one big market for human-centric and trustworthy AI. It's a huge attempt to find that sweet spot between innovation and our fundamental rights.
So if you're going to remember one thing from all this, let it be this. The Act is so clever because it doesn't treat AI as this one single scary thing. It gets at AI as a whole toolbox full of different tools, and by creating a rulebook where the rules are proportional to the risk, it tries to regulate smartly, not just broadly.
With this act, the EU has really planted its flag in the ground. It has set a comprehensive standard for how to govern AI. The billion-dollar question now is, will the rest of the world follow its lead, or are we going to see a bunch of different, conflicting AI rules all over the globe? That's the story we're all going to be watching unfold.